Inspiration, Adventist Reflections.
Hello citizens, this is Adventist Reflections, an interpersonal commentary where present biblical truth meets psychological reasoning. Now, to discuss character building ideas, here is your host, Dr. Danzie.
Hi family, welcome back to the Adventist Reflections podcast, your podcast. This episode is episode 2 of our new quarterly series on family seasons. Today's reflections are based on the Sabbath school study entitled The Choices We Make. Today I'm recording from the Philippines, from a place called the city of Tarlac. And I was invited here to serve for the next few weeks, almost 3 weeks. And I'm excited to be here because many of you who listen from this beautiful country have expressed some positive views on this. I have even met some of you already. So look, if you are in the Philippines, why not send me a Facebook or Instagram message about where you are? I'll be delighted to hear from you. And I will be happy to invite you to come to see this series that we will be presented here in Tarlac, entitled The Mindful Revolution. In fact, I have a special gift from Australia to the first 5 people who come to the meetings and that tell me that you listen to this episode. So if you listen to this promo, if you listen to this episode, and you are from the Philippines and you come to see me and say, hey, Dr. Danzie, I heard that you have something for me. If you are within the first 5 people who tell me that, I will be delighted to give you something that I brought all the way from Australia for you. Again, I thank in this case, my masseurs from the Logan Reserve Church for recording this blessed music that you are listening and enjoying in the background. I hope it is a blessing for you as it has been a blessing for me. Now, to our reflections today. A psychologist mentor of mine told me many years ago that 3 of the most important choices in life go back to the essence of where our relationships are founded. She said, first, one must choose a God and religion. Second, we choose our life companion. And third, a professional path. Back then, I was still in a very raw path in my profession. Well, I didn't really have a path. I didn't have a profession as such. I was doing my undergrad, ironically, in psychology. This mentor's idea, however, stuck to my head ever since because it made so much sense then as it does now. These decisions are not sequential, but rather in order of importance. Think about it. At one point or another, we all must make a choice about God's existence and accept who He is and where He calls us to be. This decision has eternal consequences. Hence, it's the most important one. Then we choose either to live a life partnered with somebody like a spouse or not. And this decision will also have an impact for the rest of our lives, hence we must choose well. And lastly, what we will do for a living. I am inclined to think that this decision is ever evolving now for our newer generations. As a millennial, I have personally experienced the changes of jobs more often than my dad ever dreamed or thought of having. However, we all make a decision about where, how, and in what capacity we will glorify God. And who knows, you might even get paid for it so you can eat, support those who you love, and keep on serving God. Today, I like to focus on making choices about the relationships we have because at least in my anecdotal and professional observations, this can have a significant repercussion in some of the most important relationships in our lives. I like us to take it back to where we left it last week, to the story of creation, and make it practical for us. Think of it. The same way that Eve chose to engage in conversation with the devil, and in one way or another develop a relationship with him, the devil won her trust. This interests me because over the decades as a Christian, I have observed and first-hand experienced that when we relate to what the Bible describes as the ungodly, it appears to be more likely for the ungodly to reach out our minds with a heavy influence than for the Christian to reach out the ungodly with their influence. Now, let us not be mistaken, for Jesus mingled with whoever needed to be hearing the gospel, his gospel. That's pretty much everybody. However, Christ had an advantage. He was born of the Spirit, straight up. He was surrendered to the will of his Father. He made choices based on the counsels of his Father, so the world's attractions could not really influence him, even though he was tempted by them. For remember that he was tempted like what we are, yet without sins. This means that he could have chosen to fall by the influence of those relationships. You see, if you present some alcohol to me, this wouldn't really have an impact on me. It wouldn't tempt me. I have never had an attraction for that. And by the power of Christ in his influence in my life, it will never have an attraction, and therefore it won't tempt me. But if you present to me a nicely crafted macadamia gelato ice cream, that's a temptation for me. I have an attraction for that, and look, it will be hard for me not to fall. That's what a temptation is. So, for Christ to be tempted, it implied that he could have chosen to fall, but he chose not to, and instead he chose to surrender what his Father's will was for his ministry. What about you? Do you know what God's will for your life is? Do you know what his will for your relationships is? Have you made sound relationships, and perhaps are you seeking to make lifetime partnerships by using God's decision-making method? Today I would like to reflect on this method, a method that we find in the scripture and that our lesson refers to, although not in a methodological manner. I learned that to make good choices, whether it is for profession or friendships or long-lasting lifetime partnerships like marriage, God left for us guidance. I came with this acrostic named choice, and as I made it, I could not help it but share it with you. So choice, CHOICE, choice. C stands for chat with God in prayer. Have you told your thoughts, your desires, and hopes to him? Have you asked him to guide you in making this decision? Why not try it? He is ever ready and wanting to hear from you because he longs to make and have a trusting relationship with you, one where you trust him. H stands for hear his voice. Have you spent time seeking his word in the Bible? God is always willing to communicate with you. Are you ready to hear him out? O stands for obey his principles. Is the choice that you are making in harmony with God's commandments, such as loving God with all your heart and everything you have and loving others as yourself? These are based on the 10 commandments, so you need to guide your decisions on these principles where God shows his character. And look, when we follow his character, we cannot go wrong in our choices. I stands for identify the options. What other choices have you got? Why would you settle for this one that you are wanting? Why would you choose what you want right now? Is this your first, second, or third best? Is this God's best? If not, which one is? Do you need to wait to chat with God, to hear him out and obey him to identify what's best? C stands for check with counsel. Have you checked divine counsel? I highly recommend inspired books such as Messages to Young People, Adventist Home, Child Guidance, and Steps to Christ to seek practical advice on relationships. Have you sought for the advice of those consecrated men and women and whose experience could be of much value in making your decision? Some pastors and some elders of the church could be a good place to start. The counsel of godly parents must never be quickly dismissed. Always cross-reference any counsel with God's given counsel. If need be, ask your counselor for proof of the case. And lastly, letter E. E stands for execute in faith. My friends, if you follow the above method, if you follow the above process, God's given method, be not afraid, not dismayed, for you cannot step wrongly if you step in faith, as you submit your will to God. If you do so, you can proceed with your choice, knowing that the battle is the Lord's. Perhaps the choice is not what you thought it would be. Perhaps you are not happy with the counsel received. Today, I would like to encourage you. Today, I would like you to know that if you surrender your will to God's will, your future will be more brighter than what you could ever imagine with the choice that you are making and for which you haven't found His counsel. For we serve a living God, one who doesn't forsake you, not forgets you, one who will keep His promise found in the scripture where He says to you right now, trust in me with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge me and I shall direct your path, because I know the plans that I have for you, plans to prosper you, to give you a hope and a bright future, to lead you on life's journey. Trust me and I will see you through this. My beloved listener, I would like to conclude this episode by inviting you to reflect on your choices and your relationships. How are today's choices shaping your relationship first with God? And then, how are they shaping your relationships with your family and with your friends? Number 2, how are today's choices shaping your relationship with your community? How do your close relationships, like at home or with your friends, affect the growth of you as a minister for Christ? And number 3, have your past choices impacted your current relationships and negatively affected the bonds with those whom you have loved? Did you say or did you do something in the name of right doing, but with very little empathy? Ask God for wisdom. Ask God for forgiveness. Ask God for a chance to mend the broken pieces. Perhaps consider the extravagant idea of the concept of giving a heartfelt apology. This is Dr. Danzie, and you just listened to the Adventist Reflections podcast, your podcast. If you would like a write-up of the acrostic of choice and its biblical references, check out our website at drdanzie.podbean.com. That is DoctorDanzie.podbean.com, or find us on Facebook or Instagram and you'll find a link to our website, and you'll find this acrostic in the description on our website of this episode. Now remember our promotion. If you are in the Philippines, I love to see you. I love to hear from you, and I have something for you. First 5 people who come to tell me that they listen to this. But before I farewell you, I send a heartfelt thank you to my first psychologist mentor, the one I mentioned before today. To my mom. Thank you, Mom. I love you. Hear you all next week. Remember to subscribe to this podcast, like it, share it, hashtag it, comment, and find us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, and Tumblr as Adventist Reflections. God bless you.